Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, viewers. I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Welcome to another exciting edition of The Agenda. Tonight, we're going to talk business, economic matters. How do we resuscitate our business sector? How do we improve our business climate, especially post-pandemic and going forward? I'm joined in studio by Mr. Travis Matthews from the NCCI. Thank you. You're the SME Development Officer.
I am.
A very important component in our economy, Ms. Hilda Basson-Namundjebo, seasoned business personality. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, guys, where do we start chewing this big monster called business in Namibia? Travis, maybe I should start with you.
Okay.
Obviously, with the pandemic, and there's been a lot of red flags, even pre-pandemic, warning us that perhaps the way we do business is we're treading on dangerous grounds. And from the NCCI side, well, how do you see things and how do we move forward?
Yeah, it's a difficult environment across the world. You know, things are changing and we have to adapt to this kind of new world that we're all exposed to. I feel like it's been a case for a while where we've understood that we need to procure more services from local suppliers, and we need to have a better job of making sure that we are supporting the local businesses from all aspects of business, whether it's the large corporates or the large government agencies and anywhere in between, making sure that our smaller businesses have access to those markets and those opportunities.
Mm-hmm. The route to recovery. Can we recover?
Yes, we can, and we must. We absolutely have no. There's nothing voluntary about this. There's nothing negotiable about recovery. It's the only sustainable way to go into the future without, obviously, you know, watching civil strife roll onto the streets of Namibia. Mm-hmm. We have to recover. We must recover. I just think, you know, to what Travis said, yes, we've known, you said for a while, that we're in trouble. Mm-hmm. I just think we've never done a proper diagnostic of how much we are in trouble, where we are in trouble, and what we must do to turn that around. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's the problem. We just don't really know. Yeah. We just assume.
Mm-hmm. So basically the pandemic was a culmination of what we've seen coming?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had a recession, I think, and a recession which went into a depression mm-hmm. at one stage for a number of years, mm-hmm. and then came COVID-19. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Travis, perhaps from NCCI's point of view, how did you guys respond to the pandemic? And were there any positive impacts, or businesses are still crying?
Well, businesses are definitely still crying mm-hmm. Across the board. So we lost, if we think about like our Windhoek market, we lost over 1,600 businesses that closed during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the NCCI's response to that was vast. We worked with health officials to offer health care and health support where it was needed. Mm-hmm. We opened up a COVID-19 helpline for all of our SMEs, and they were utilizing that line for a variety of services and a variety of questions on the uncertainty that would lie ahead. Yeah. There were various grant opportunities that were opened up for businesses, and those are still ongoing through today. And building partnerships, mm-hmm. trying to make sure that we have the proper systems in place so businesses understand that they are being supported and that they are provided the opportunities that they need to move forward.
Yeah, but from a policy perspective and a macro level, what is your role in that? What do you think, what are you guys busy advocating for to ensure that your members have this proper shell to operate under?
Sure. Yeah, we have a variety of policy divisions that are being worked on within our private level and within the state level. Mm-hmm. My position is a little bit removed from those discussions, mm-hmm. but we have those people in place, meeting with government, meeting with policymakers to ensure that the way that we move forward through this pandemic and in years ahead, that we have proper relationships in place to ensure that the smaller businesses are connected to what is needed to help them survive and thrive.
Yeah. Well, Hilda, you of course also come from, you've experienced how it feels to do business in Namibia, being part of the SME component of the economy. And what are some of the things you think Trevor and his team should look at going forward?
I honestly don't think that there's even a conversation happening. Mm-hmm. If NCCI is talking to government, I'm not sure whose agenda they're discussing with government, because I'm not sure that the SME sector has been, has been engaged, has been dialogued with to understand what's on the SME agenda, what are the problems that the SMEs face. The problem in Namibia is simply that we don't ask questions. The problem is simply we don't investigate. The problem is we assume too much. So when there is a conversation happening, how do you have that conversation? What do you know what the real issues are? Let's take this specific case in point. The government has made money available, the SME fund, for example, which was then made available after COVID. There's no uptake in regard that specific fund, which has been made available through the commercial banks. Do we know why people like myself can't access that kind of capital, can't access those kinds of funds? You know, we can't. If you really ask the Bank of Namibia how much of that money has been made available to SMEs, how much of it has been drawn down, almost nothing, probably 0.1%. Why, when companies are closing? You know, you have to ask yourself what's wrong in the system, rather than just act and continue with business as usual and just saying that it's okay and we're having conversations. We can't be having conversations. We've had them for too long.
Yeah. So what would you ascribe the low uptake to that you are describing?
I just think that that the conditions, again, are for normal Namibia, as if we don't have a recession, as if there is no pandemic. Those are the conditions under which banks extend these kinds of funds. However, the situation is very different. Yes. So the problem is literally that we are incongruent. The problems and the solutions are not speaking to each other.
Yeah. Travis?
Yeah, I mean, those conversations...
Have you gotten some concerns from your members regarding the conditions that are in place under the current circumstances?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all aware of what situation we're in. Those conversations are definitely happening. We're not the decision makers on what the development bank is doing, you know, but we push those agendas forward. We meet with our members, we meet with our corporate members, and we meet with the stakeholders that are involved to try to push that agenda forward, to make sure those opportunities are loosened up and that the businesses can access whatever it is that they're looking for, whether it's capital or business opportunities or tenders or whatever that may be.
Yeah, but as a chamber, what do you advise your members as to how they should run their operations, especially from an organization point of view? What are some of the advice you give them?
In what ways?
Well, in terms of operations, perhaps under the current conditions, we know it's not the normal environment that they are used to. So do you perhaps facilitate programs for them in terms of training and saying, this is how we should now perhaps look at doing business, perhaps go digital and so on? What are some of these, what are the interventions that NCCI has in place?
Absolutely. So from my side with the SME development, we have a variety of opportunities that are available to our businesses. So whether it is, as you mentioned, training or business development, we have access to a variety of opportunities, things that are being done through the NCCI and also being done through other organizations that we promote, and we make sure that everyone has access to those. So if someone feels like they're in a position right now where they don't have the information they need or the access to training on the smaller level for smaller businesses, they absolutely need to contact us. We can provide them ample opportunities to develop themselves in this current space. We're providing the opportunity for conversations, cross-border trade with our bordering nations to make sure that Namibian products have their space on shelves within the region and then possibly internationally as well to Europe and other markets. So those conversations are being had, but it's a difficult time. So we work within the policymakers as well as the smaller businesses to make sure that we are pushing forward and making sure that we are moving in the right direction.
Hilda, just to come to you, from a business perspective, in terms of synergy between the policymakers and people like yourselves who are on the ground, that vacuum there, what do we do to fill that? Because it seems like there is a communication gap in there.
It's the way that Namibia is. We are a country that effectively run in silos. We don't speak to each other, and we don't intentionally break down those silos. For me, you know, one of the things that I really like about the President's Harambee Prosperity Plan, the development plan being one thing, but the ethos of that plan, I wish that that plan had been not just the development plan that it is. I wish also that it was a philosophy that we, you know, that we supported as a country. That, and I know the President frequently says no one should be left behind or should feel left out, but I'm wondering the extent to which we almost dismantle policies which go in different directions. It's not just people who are going in different directions. People go in different directions because the policy drive them to go in different directions. So when as a country do we sit down and we dismantle policies where we see this policy drive the silo thinking and silo type of operation? And I don't think we've ever done that as a country. We're going into, this is the year for NDP 6 engagement, because NDP 5 is coming to an end this year, so we need to begin thinking about what is it that we're going to plan for in NDP 6. You know, I hope that there would be a cleanup of policy. You know, Travis is responsible for SME development. A few years ago, I attended the MITSMET, the Ministry of Industrialization conversations on what is an SME in this country. We don't even know that. We don't even have one definition for it. You know, the conversations, so how do you help me when you don't even know what I am, that I'm an SME because the attributes and characteristics of an SME sector looks like this? We don't know. So we need to have these critical, honest conversations and go into doing the work to say, let's put all of these policies on the table and say, this one is not helping that one. We had the disaster now in December with the investment legislation, you know, going that direction, but we have hydrogen being purported by this government as the answer to our economic solutions. But that legislation does not speak to the environment, you know, that we must operate under to attract these big investors to Namibia and then create the kinds of jobs that we must create as an economy. So everything is just, it's just all over the place. Can we just clean up this year? That's really what I'd like to see.
Yeah. The next question, I think it applies to both of you. We seem to view the devastating effects of COVID as just a short-term thing that's going to blow over very soon. But if you hone it into it very critically, you'll see that there are actually long-term structural shifts that are waiting for us going ahead. How do we brace for this?
Yeah, I think that there are residual benefits and residual consequences from the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, with technology, we can communicate better. So it's much easier to connect with other places. It's part of our common daily activities now to be on Zoom and Skype calls, connecting with people from all over the world. That's a huge benefit and a huge opportunity for people to meet and interact with people that they wouldn't normally have access to. Prior to 2015, I don't remember having too many conference calls on Zoom or Skype, maybe never. And now they're daily. So that's a huge opportunity that people have in manufacturing, in trying to connect trade, people that want to connect products and services across borders. Huge, huge opportunity there. I don't think that there's anything that says COVID happens and therefore we're going to have residual negative effects for long term. It's things that happen. Businesses have closed. We've had to renegotiate the way that we do certain things. But that doesn't mean that we're stuck in a certain hole for an extended period of time because of that. Yeah. You see other economies that have boosted. Wealth is way up right now. Maybe business development is way down, but wealth, the increase of GDP and opportunities across the world are going up. You know, so it doesn't mean that we're stuck in one place for a long time.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the advantage, Travis mentioned the advantage, obviously, of technology. That has changed Namibia. And I'm not sure we're even having the conversation, like, how has it changed Namibia? Yeah. Because it's true. I don't have to be in a country anymore to have an engagement with somebody or to have a negotiation with somebody. What does that mean? How does that impact me today? We're not having this conversation. We must have this conversation, or at least we must do the research to say how does it impact us. So yes, there are advantages. I do think the disadvantages are enormous. I just think we haven't done the work to understand how they are impacting us. Mental health. Just imagine how many people have lost loved ones very close to them. These are not robots. These are human beings who work in organizations. How has that affected them in a mental health capacity, and how does that mental health challenge now affect their productivity? You certainly can't just say that everything is back to normal and everything is fine and things like that. Buildings that were invested in, they are huge buildings in Windhoek. They are empty, they are vacant because people are now working from home. What do you do with that infrastructure that you have available? How do you make that profitable? And what do you have available in the economy that you can scale, you know, to grow in those areas where those 1,600 businesses no longer exist? Yeah. We must have these conversations.
Yeah. Well, before we continue with our conversation, let's just go for a short ad break, and we'll be back.
The My Inner Property Show provides viewers with the best-in-class property content, from looking for the perfect house to transforming it to the perfect home, with focus on interior designing, transforming your garden into a tranquil haven, to going green and having the funds and security of financing and insurance. The My Inner Property Show has it all. Tune in and make your house a home with our monthly My Inner Property Show on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 on all the NMH Facebook platforms and our website TV channel 1up2, 1up2.com.
Well, we're back from the short ad break. Let's continue our conversation. Business, business, business. If not half of those who've lost their job during the pandemic, you would see that most of them have been working in the economically exposed sectors. A huge chunk of that are also people with limited qualifications, so they can't really apply for a job somewhere else. It's your laborers and so on. How do we recover from this? How do we bring them back into the mainstream employment sector? If we mentioned now 1,600 businesses closed down, how do we bring back these people? Some of us, we're fortunate, we have qualifications, we can apply for a job somewhere else. But what about my cousin who only had grade 10 and has been having his job for 15 years? Now it's gone. How do we move forward in that regard?
You know, one of the things that I believe is that there's so much opportunity in Namibia. It's certainly a country with lots of opportunity. One of the things that I hope this year we look at specifically is how can we make this economy more efficient? And when we make this economy more efficient, I think we will be able to find spots where we can create jobs. So it's just for me the work that we must do to understand where are these opportunities. I think also a value that we must place on the Namibian person to say that you are valuable and I want to include you in the economy. And a lot of those people, those 1,600 businesses, a lot of those people must be reskilled. Maybe for a while, for this year, we focus on reskilling those people so that, yes, maybe this year you don't quite have a new job, but maybe next year you can have a job. But not leaving them just dormant, sitting at home, because the retrenchment packages or benefits that they've earned, they must be running out by now. Yes. What do we do with them now? How can we reskill them? For me, that is the opportunity, reskilling our human resources at a low basis so that they can become profitable, so that they can become employable again in the short term.
Yeah. Travis?
I think there is so let's take tourism, for example. Hard hit, a lot of restaurants, a lot of hotels, lodges, closing down, reducing their staff. You hear staff shortages, or not shortages, but staff reduced 75% in some places, people still on 50% salaries. And there was a shift from understanding that these places are only marketed towards foreigners and then trying to attract more local people to these spaces. Yeah. SADC, Namibian discounts are common, still lasting through the holiday season into today, maybe even going until February, March, realizing that there's markets and employers elsewhere. And so that brings back some of those employees that were lost during that time. Namibians understanding that we have to purchase and procure our products and services from Namibian businesses. That shift needs to take place. People that say that I'm going to go for the cheapest option because that's what's available to me, and then not opting for the Namibian option that might be even just $1 or $2 more, that needs to change. Yeah. We need to look at people that are here supporting our businesses and our local economy and support them first versus going somewhere else. Yeah. Looking to local manufacturers, and that'll bring back those investments. You know, if we understand that there's a shift from, let's say, in clothing, where Namibians are now purchasing more clothing from Namibian suppliers, that'll bring in the investment. Say, okay, now we're going to bring in some investment for manufacturing and clothing here because we know Namibians are purchasing from their own people. Yeah. That shift will bring back those jobs and those opportunities for these people that might have lost their employment during that time.
But Matthias, also agriculture. I mean, the jobs are in the agricultural sector. A large part of these jobs are available in that sector. How do we make this sector, you know, the vibrant sector that it used to be? Yeah. Not last year, but in the year 2020, we had an agricultural summit where the Ministry of Agriculture relooked the sector and to look at making agriculture resilient to, you know, for the future fit, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's when we realized that where our agriculture used to produce, or at least used to contribute 10% to the GDP, it was at that stage producing 3 to 4% to the GDP. How do we make agriculture more efficient? Because those jobs you are talking about, the rural economy, that is where we must focus, you know. So I know one of the conversations at the time, because I did a survey, I did research for the sector. And one of the conversations I had was with Junius Mungunda at the time. He was Standard Bank's MD. And Junius was saying, we focus so much on the secondary sectors, but we don't focus on primary sectors. Mm-hmm. For example, if you say value chains must be enhanced, that's a huge area where we can create jobs. But you don't produce enough tomatoes on the farms so that you can have a value chain for a tomato, so I don't have to just take it and make it and put it into a salad. How can I make tomato paste of that? How can I make tomato onion mix of that, etc., etc.? So it's going back to the basics and say in the agricultural sector, are we maximizing the primary production of agriculture and all of the stuff that we produce in agriculture? The same with manufacturing. We must please stop talking about clothes from South Africa and Namibian clothes. We don't have cotton. We don't have skills to produce Namibian clothes. We don't have markets for these things. We must look at the Namibian economy and say, what do we have? What can we do with what we have? Agriculture is a huge opportunity. But we're not paying attention to it.
Yeah. I want to comment on that, that there is ample funding opportunities for businesses in the agriculture space. If people and your viewers don't have that information, they're welcome to contact us, contact me directly. I'm happy to link them into these opportunities that are available. So those that are trying to be, as Hilda was talking about in agriculture, those agriculture entrepreneurs that are looking to start businesses, provide these products and services to Namibia, there are plenty of opportunities that those people can get the funding that they need to get themselves started.
Okay. I think the next question also will still apply to both of you. There has been this conversation that perhaps the SME sector is over-reliant on government as far as procuring goods and services is concerned. How do we move from that transition from that over-reliance to really ensuring there's a fully capacitated trading environment between the private sector operators?
Yeah, one thing that we've been doing at NCCI for a while, and part of my role into 2022 is big part of my agenda, is making sure that the larger employers have access to these smaller SMEs. You know, perhaps it's easier to procure the services through their value chains that they already have, their supply chains. We want to make those easier. So if you are a local electrician or a local plumber and you're trying to tap into these larger employers, that we can create that opportunity for the larger employers to procure those services easier and more effectively. It's not the case anymore where someone can say, I'm just going to apply for government tenders, and that's how I'm going to operate my business. But if we have our larger employers and our government movers, or I'm sorry, our economic movers and shakers, spending the bulk of their money on their services and products from local suppliers and local businesses, then we can really create an opportunity where those smaller businesses have access to these contracts that are sometimes provided to other businesses that aren't necessarily Namibians.
But what should happen from a policy perspective if I own a large corporation from South Africa and I can get the goods I need to operate here in South Africa, why would I want to get it from an SME in Namibia?
Yeah, so if you look at agriculture, for example, a supplier of tomatoes, as was mentioned, the Namibian products have first preference over foreign products, even though those foreign products may be cheaper. So we can look into opportunities that would be providing some incentive to supply with, to procure from local suppliers in any capacity that would be advantageous versus the foreign suppliers. It could be tax breaks, could be incentives, what have you. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are opportunities that we can make that work in a policy perspective. But from just a good governance perspective, we need to be sure that we're supporting the businesses that are here first. And so creating incentives on a policy space is important, but changing that identity and that culture that says we're going to go for the cheapest even though it's foreign. That needs to change in order to bring us all up.
Yeah.
But the reason why people support foreign is because it's sexy branding.
Well, you're going into your space now of
yes, of
yeah,
the country, the president has announced this year to be the year of re-imaging. That means we need to repackage the manner in which we appear, the manner in which people perceive us, you know. And I think one of the things, let's understand, for example, sweets. You know, a number of years ago, somebody contacted me. She was in Okahanya. She was manufacturing sweets. All she needed was that Namibians would uptake and buy her sweets. But her branding was horrible. So if I have to look at an international brand and say, this is what international chocolate looks like, Cadbury, for example, sorry to pun somebody, or to plug somebody now. So an international chocolate looks like, this is what it looks like, and I look at it versus Namibian branding, which is a see-through plastic thing with a funny logo that somebody designed with software at home. It just is obvious I'm going to buy the internationally more appealing looking, you know, sweet or chocolate. So, Ministry of Industrialization, for example, I think that would be a worthy project for this year. What are Namibian products? What do they look like? When I see it in the store, is it appealing for me to buy? Maybe then I'll be able or willing to pay the premium on the pricing for that. But the products and services are packaged in a horrible manner that is not appealing to customers. We know how customers function. You don't just buy on price. You buy also to satisfy who you are and you know, to satisfy yourself within. So we must go back to those things, but because it's a year of re-imaging, let's intentionally look at Namibian products and say, how are they packaged, how are they perceived, and how can we enhance that perception so that more Namibians buy the product.
You didn't answer the question on overburdening and over-reliance on government.
Over-reliance on government?
I want to hear this from a business perspective. How do we graduate from just applying for a government contract to ensuring that I have a sustainable business model, that even if government is not taking up or bringing out any jobs, I can still continue my business?
I think some of us have done that for a very long time. I think we understand that Namibia is not just the government, that as Namibians we trade with Namibians, Namibians to Namibians, private sector within. Again, it's obviously buying issues, you know, what is available in Namibia? Do you know what you can buy locally from another Namibian supplier? And just to stop, you know, it's shocking for me that tenderpreneurs are still alive in Namibia, you know, post-COVID, because I had hoped that they would have gone away with COVID. You know, really that we would no longer have these businesses that exist merely for the purposes of tenders, because those are the guys who make it difficult, you know, for the private sector really to grow, because they're just depending on a tender from government. But we must be intentional, you know, and look for business so that we can do business with each other. I am sure there's enough scope within the private sector to begin to do business with each other, because the private sector also, they also a culprit, because it's too easy for a lot of the private sector in Namibia to pick up the phone and to call a South African supplier for a service that is available in Namibia. So we're not quite buying. I'd love to know, you know, we know what, I mean, when we talked about the African Free Trade Agreement, we had a figure for how much inter-Africa trade do we do. What is the inter-country trade that we do, private sector to private sector? It would be wonderful to know what that figure is and how can we target it and how can we grow it specifically. It's those things that we need to understand, then we can begin to act differently.
I totally agree. You know, within the chamber, we try to create those connections. If someone is building out a new office space and they want to order desks or tables, it's easy to go online, find a foreign supplier and order foreign. Yet we have ample suppliers here, maybe not branded properly as you mentioned, but high quality, good, supporting their community, likely cheaper, and maybe those connections aren't available. Maybe someone goes on and Googles, you know, where do I find anything for your office, decorations or whatever the case is, and they find those foreign suppliers where they could easily find it here if they have those right connections. And so through the chamber, we're trying to make that obvious and available to people. Hey, if you want this for whatever, plumbers, electricians, service providers, products, where can we find that here first? It might take a little bit of an extra effort, an extra step, might require a little bit more insight, a little bit more time, But with that little bit more time, effort, insight, we can build up these local businesses to larger suppliers that people know about, enhancing their credibility, their reputation, their brand imaging, and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I guess it's also the vision that we have for our country. Do we really have a vision for our country as individuals? Not as a country. The country has a vision. It's well articulated. We know what it is. But how do I understand my role in the fulfillment of that vision? And when I understand that I have a role in the fulfillment of that vision, I will take decisions like this more seriously, such as let me prefer a local even though it may be more expensive, even let me prefer a local even though it may be less attractive, because I understand I create a local job that creates local sustainability, etc., etc. The spin-offs and the benefits are just enormous when I create a local job, when I prefer a local product.
Yeah. Well, we'll go for our last ad break and come back for the last segment of the show. Well, welcome back to our last segment of the show. We are going to touch on bouncing back as we close off. Firstly, maybe I should ask that, are we putting too much flack on government for things we should be doing ourselves?
Yes, we are. Because we don't like to take responsibility for ourselves. It's easier. Government is nice. It's identifiable. I know who I'm pointing at when I talk about government, forgetting that actually we are also part of this government as well. You know, government for the people, by the people.
Yeah.
Isn't that the song that we sing? Yes, I do think government takes a lot of flack, you know, but I think sometimes also government takes a lot of flack because government also pretends to solve all of our problems. So if a parent, you say to your child, or you position yourself as, you can come to me with any problem you have, the child will abuse that. And we abuse it because government makes itself available. Maybe government should kick back and tell us to go and sort out our own problems sometimes.
I feel like from a regulatory standpoint, absolutely there's challenges that businesses face that could be easier and done more effectively.
For example?
Registration, fitness certificates, you know, organizational stuff, back of the office stuff that needs to get taken care of. I don't want to point my finger too many at other offices, but there are challenges that would be barriers to entry in certain capacities. But I absolutely don't think that we need to point our fingers at government and say you need to solve our problems all the time.
No.
It's common to walk through the grocery store and see foreign products being purchased over local suppliers all the time because of maybe the branding or the imaging or product placement or these kinds of things. And yeah, I question that. I would be curious how many folks are buying their furniture for their home from local businesses. I get all my stuff made custom from local suppliers that I see out hanging out on the streets. They make it better, higher quality, and cheaper. Substantially less money on purchasing from a local person that's making custom for you. So again, those extra steps above and beyond pointing our finger and saying, hey, you know, someone else has to solve our problems, figure it out for me. We need to understand how we can support each other in a better capacity.
Yeah. Would I be wrong to say that we have a high level of entitlement in this country?
Oh, absolutely.
How do we get rid of that?
You know, again, when you travel, you know, and that's what is the wonderful thing about traveling, is when you open your eyes and you really see what other people go through in their countries. Yes, Namibians don't travel enough outside the country, not even within the country, and therefore we have the sense of entitlement, because when you know that other people really go through a lot more than we do to have a reasonable, you know, quality of life, then maybe you'll be more appreciative of what you have available and less entitled. But I just think our minds, you know, our mindsets are not liberated. Our mindset, and I don't think it's anybody's responsibility. I don't think it's government's responsibility to liberate our mindsets. It's our own responsibility. But we feel very entitled, and we Namibians are weird. We like safety. We like being protected. We like being looked after. We're not such an innovative country like we like to portray. We really like safety more than we like innovation. You know, and that is a bit of a problem, and I think it's the phase in which we are in right now should make us a bit more hungry, should make us a bit more curious, should make us a bit more innovative, you know. And I think maybe we should begin to have these conversations and welcome these, you know, where we are as a country. But entitlement is not going to take us into the next decade. You know, it's not going to help us grow. Yeah.
Travis? Of course, you've been in Namibia for some years now. Coming from the US, how do you see things?
So I don't think it's fair for me to comment as a foreigner on entitlement. I can share something I learned from a book a while back. And I studied economics in school, and I'm really fascinated with social and behavioral economics. And there is a study that was done that said the best way to ensure that your children are going to be successful contributors to society is to have hardworking parents.
Yeah.
That's it. Not rich parents, not poor parents, not parents with good jobs, hardworking. And I see that in a variety of communities that I'm part of. I'm part of a Namibian family. I have a Namibian wife, a Namibian child. And I want to instill in the values within my children that I'm going to work hard for what I want. I'm not going to expect that other people hand things to me. I'm not going to expect that I'm going to get a check every month from somebody because of what I deserve. I think that I want to work for what I make and work for what I go for. So I want to instill those values into my family. And I think that that is a really good recipe for making sure that you're building a society that is hardworking and supporting each other.
And also, who do we celebrate? I mean, I had this conversation with our family. We had a road trip type holiday this year. And it was a wonderful opportunity because you talk to your children in a manner in which we would not, you know, otherwise, because you're stuck in this car the whole way. And Namibia is such a vast country, so you drive long distances for long times and you have these conversations. Like I had to really interrogate, who do my kids admire? Who do they celebrate? Who do they look up to? We only portray these guys who have gained quick success, you know, and then the kids think, I'm entitled to that success because that person also didn't work hard, didn't even finish school, but look where the person is today. We need to role model people who do the hard work, the silent heroes, the unsung heroes. We need to begin to celebrate those people in our communities. It doesn't have to be on the front pages of newspapers, but in our communities, we just need to instill these values of people who do the right thing so that our people can look up to, these are the role models that we need to emulate.
I want to echo that, and that would be a great, that's what I would answer to that question. I feel like we have really hard workers that support our businesses and our society and the way that we function as a community here in Namibia that are vastly undervalued by the way they're compensated, by the way they're talked to, by the way they're treated, the places that they live, and kind of put over in that corner. You know, and so if we can renegotiate the way that we value the people that work hard to support us, and perhaps in the way that we compensate them, the way that we talk to them, the way that we interact with them on a daily basis, that would be a pretty substantial shift in the way that we can evaluate the way that we look at hard work in this country.
Of course, one of the red flags pre-pandemic as to how we do business in this country has always been the conversation around government's involvement in the private sector. Should government be there? Or should it just create that space for the private sector to operate? As we look at the road ahead, post-COVID, are we still going to have this conversation?
I mean, in Namibia, really, can you really say that government shouldn't be involved at all, you know, in the private sector? I'm not sure. I'd like to see government transition out of the private sector, not remain there. I think the way we find ourselves with the number of state-owned enterprises was a consequence of apartheid. We came out of that situation, that environment. We had to establish institutions to provide services to a whole nation. Because before that, we had the Bantustan type of government, one for whites, one for coloreds, and then one for black people. And we had to dismantle that and establish something new, and the state-owned enterprises to a large extent fulfilled that function. and often took up the share that probably should, or the services that should be extended by a private sector company. 31 years after independence, we need to begin to see some emerge out of that environment and become fully private sector type organizations. One of the things I loved a few years ago with the budget speech with Kale Schlettwein when he was Minister of Finance still, and I hope that in my lifetime I will see this fulfilled. And I think we need this critically in the country because we need finance and we need money, was the partial listing, of some state-owned enterprises. I still hope that we can see that. I think it's necessary for us to go with some of them emerging from fully, government type organizations to become more private sector focused. I think a partial listing would help. It would also avail government with some funding that we probably need desperately.
Well, NCCL's view, what is your viewpoint on that?
In short, I feel like there is ample space for private and public sector to work together. And as we have policy discussions and as Hilda mentioned, those conversations with the people on the ground, understanding what's going to make them feel better, what's going to make them businesses operate better, easier, less red tape. Those are all things that we can work with government to make sure that they can get done. I absolutely feel that there is a place in business for government support, and I feel like there's sometimes you can step up and step back. But in a time like we are, we're trying to have some kind of economic recovery, we're trying to deal with a recession and then a pandemic and then all the residual effects that impact that we can work together as a team to make sure that we are moving forward in the right direction.
But government becoming a, government being responsible as a government, which is a policy-making environment and extending some of those social services to people, would be a better government if government could get out of some of these private sector type of businesses, because it would give them a sense of focus on their core business, just like the private sector should focus on their core business, which is to render private services to citizenry. So I just think it's in the interest of all of us that government gets out of the private sector space and really just gets its job done.
Of course, there's growing hope that we'll see real economic recovery. But what does this entail? What recovery are we hoping for when we speak about economic recovery, actually? For the layman on the street, what is this recovery that we keep on preaching in terms of the economy?
There's absolutely no going back to not recovery. We must recover. I think, what do you want? What is it that we envisage? A country that runs on life support? I can't imagine living there. So we better recover. And I think the low-hanging fruits are there. The agricultural sector is one of the key ones. So if we can just get agriculture right, oh man, the difference we will see in this country would be enormous. And look at the rain at the moment. So we have opportunities such as this, so it's thinking. Matthias, for me, one of the things, that is a pet hatred of mine, is the filth that we see around government buildings. We don't look after our infrastructure. Our buildings are dilapidated, not because we don't spend money on it, but because the people who are responsible to look after these buildings don't look after these buildings. So we have dilapidated infrastructure, not because, yes, of course, there were bad tenders awarded to friends and family members, and they did a shoddy job. Of course, that is the one component. But the other component is that there are really amazing infrastructure that we must look after in a better fashion. And I think that's where some of these recovery issues would come from and where the jobs would come from. But what is not negotiable, a recovery is not negotiable. The creation of multiple hundreds of thousands of jobs this year is not negotiable. And I really believe that agriculture is one. I believe the energy sector is another one. I believe services, the rendering of services, that would be another area where we could create more jobs. And generally just the efficiency overall of the economy, definitely.
I really like that answer. I champion NCCI. I really believe in what business organizations, business support organizations can offer. Connecting, networking, bringing people together. Those are the things that would swiffen up that recovery. Making sure you're not sitting over there and someone else is sitting over here, not able to talk, not able to interact. I take criticism to heart, and I want to support the people that say that, hey, this could be done a bit better, we can try this out differently. I want to hear those comments. I don't have the ego that says, I'm right all the time, you're wrong all the time, so therefore, I'm not going to make any changes. I want to bring people together. I want to connect people. I want the tourism sector to be championed by the Hospitality Association. and the the mining companies championed by the Chamber of Mines, and bring those voices together in a conducive environment that says, this is what we're speaking to as a industry. This is our communal voice.
Yeah.
This is what we need to support our businesses and also help ourselves grow.
Okay. But how is it? It's always so surprising when we speak of economic recovery, but we hardly speak of the informal sector and its role in this process. Is it that insignificant?
It's not. It's probably hugely significant, and I think pandemic, I'm sure that sector grew because those 1,600 businesses which closed, the people who work there, they are not just sitting at home. They have become part of the informal market or the informal sector, whether they sell ice, whether they sell chips, whether they sell Fitcook, whatever they do, they have become economically active in a small way to keep their children in school and to eat, at least one meal a day. So I think, again, it's the way we think. We think in a certain manner. We think that what is important is what is cute and sophisticated and what we're comfortable with. And we're not so comfortable with the informal markets, and therefore we don't engage it. But a guy like Michael Akupa does wonderful work in articulating the agenda and the size and the growth. Because in a way, we're becoming just like another African country because the informal market is growing. And it's time we pay attention to that market and bring better services to that market because it's inevitable, it's here to stay, and it's only going to grow. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, and it's sad that, you had to highlight that, but it's because it's just the way that we think about it. We think only of the private sector and government. Yeah.
Travis?
With the use of technology and connecting, as I mentioned, networking, connecting people to this person over here and this person over here, there are emerging opportunities and emerging businesses that are working within the informal sector, to make ease of business easier for those communities. It would often exist that somebody's looking for some kind of work within their homestead or within their household, and don't really know how to connect to those people. So the bringing of technology to those communities that have the work, have the resources, have the opportunities, to people that might not be connected to those, there's ample opportunities. And there are several businesses that are really tapping into the informal sector right now to make ease of business easier, and they are doing very well, and perhaps going to bring their services across the border into Botswana, Angola, Zambia as well. So yeah, making ease of business easier for the informal sector, there's ample technology opportunities in that space. And
that means legislation that needs to be looked at. It means policies such as a fitness certificate, which, if you want me to, I'm an informal business, and then the city, the town council in which I am, the local authority that I reside in, then tells me that before I can get a VAT certificate, I must have a fitness certificate, but I'm actually working from my house, which is probably not a formal structure from which I do my business. And before I can operate as a business and you give me the relevant the documentation for me to operate, you want me to have a fitness certificate. Yeah. How? It's like we're not realistic about the things we ask some of our people. So again, dismantle what you believed about economics. Just understand that there's a formal economy and there's an informal economy, and the rules of the formal economy cannot be applied to the informal economy. But there can be rules, but the rules must be different. But just have the conversation, articulate, and ask people. You can't be without rules, but let's at least begin to agree on how are we going to govern you, how are we going to operate. But you can't bring the formal sector's rules to the informal sector rules and think that this thing will work. It can't work.
Just as we wrap up, I just want your views on, there was a conversation a few years back around whether we should consider formalizing the informal economy.
What do we mean when we say we want to formalize it? We want to tax them.
Well, I believe that was the gist of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
We just didn't want to say
it, exactly.
But I believe that was it.
Yeah, no, look, we tax them already when they buy services and product through, the general VAT. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we first need to understand that specific sector and begin to make new rules for that sector. Yeah. So that sector can get on its feet, can scale, and hopefully they can graduate from the informal sector to the formal sector, because at least we would like to see people graduate. I'd not like to be, I always think about the SME, that abbreviation, that acronym. It's small, there's actually SMME, small.
MSME.
Yeah, MSME. Yeah, micro, small, medium enterprises. I think a micro guy would like to become a small guy, and a small guy would like to become a medium guy, and a medium guy eventually would like to become a corporate, you know. But we don't even see that graduation taking place because we don't have the policy framework to enable them to graduate. So you born a micro, you die a micro, you're born as small, you die as small. We must see guys graduate through the value chain.
Yeah, I agree. With NCCI, we have a category that is very, very affordable as micro to bring people into our network. So those businesses that want to, I suppose, formalize in a way and be part of a business support organization that's going to really champion and fight for them, they can enter into our network. The services are provided are minimal, but they become part of our network and we can champion them in certain ways. So that's what NCCI is doing on our behalf, to bring those micro businesses into the fold.
Of course, I'd like to have you guys here for the whole day, but we don't have the world's time. So I'm going to wrap up with just the final question, just the exit question. What are some of the approaches for the long-term business sustainability and ensuring that we are prepared for future pandemics? Who goes first for the last question?
I think the reason why the pandemic hit us so hard was because we were already in trouble. And so I think running a solid economy, you know, it makes you stronger. Just like I look after my body, you know, if I can bring it to that, not because, not for any other reason that I would like to have consistent performance in that regard. So that when the day that I get sick, I had COVID now in December, I didn't have it so heavy because I think there was a general sense of, you know, that I look after myself consistently throughout the time. I think of the economy the same way, that we need to be consistent and not manage an economy for a bad day, but we must just scale an economy and run it exceptionally well and do the right thing. For example, spend in productive sectors. Do not overspend in sectors which do not produce the results, like services which just gulp government income. But government, when it has money available, invest in health. If we had invested in health, we had a presidential commission on health matters a few years ago. What happened to the recommendations of that specific presidential commission? Had we introduced them, had we implemented them, the health sector would not have been as hard hit as it was, you know, by COVID. So look at the Namibian economy right now and look at where are the productive areas and invest in those and scale down on things like buildings which just become white elephants and cannot be occupied right now. We've overinvested in buildings. Now they're standing empty. So it's really thinking again, I think, for me, where we have to begin.
Hilda mentioned a few of the projects that are happening here, the Green Hydrogen Project and within agriculture. These sectors, as we search for more sustainable ways of interacting in the long run, that's where the entire globe needs to head. You know, we need to look into these opportunities that are going to bring more sustainable solutions for energy, for food production, for our own personal well-beings, healthcare, into every economy in the world needs to be focusing on these things. And I think Namibia, from a policy perspective and governmental perspective, has done a great job of making sure that these are priorities within their agenda. In any space, I can't say these are the words of NCCI, but from a personal point of view, any economy that has a few people with a lot and a lot of people with nothing is bound to have massive challenges. I would think I can attribute nearly all social challenges to the fact that there's massive inequality in certain spaces. And I absolutely feel like Namibia has to address those challenges in a pretty radical way. And so perhaps you saw the news article that came out a few days ago talking about the amount of folks living in poverty in Namibia. And that should open some eyes. That should teach people that, okay, maybe the way that we conduct things are not the most appropriate ways of doing things. Bringing it back to the NCCI, we want to work to make sure that these businesses that are struggling have those opportunities, that we can make that inequality gap shrink. And that's a method for success for long-term economic development.
Travis, Hilda, thank you very much for your insight and wisdom.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
All good.